All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank our young people, our business community, our government, community, elected officials, philanthropic leaders, all that are standing here with me today, including our great state senator, Senator Antonio Hayes Sr., our great councilman, Senior, our great councilman Chris Burnett as well, our city administrator, both of my deputy mayors, Faith Leach and Ted Carter, also to our great friend Dr. Jenkins for his steadfast leadership and partnership with Coppin throughout the years. For the past 2 summers, Coppin has partnered with the Mayor's Office of African American Male Engagement to host a Rites of Passage program for young men across Baltimore. And this year, some of this year's participants are standing with us today. And before I get started, I want to also recognize Dr. Deborah Brooks, the new Executive Director of the Mayor's Office of Children and Family Success. Dr. Brooks joins my team with more than 30 years of experience in education, most notably for me, being the former principal of my neighborhood elementary school, Moravia Park Elementary Middle. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Brooks to the team. Or better said, to another portion of the team. Dr. Brooks was already on the team. In a short while, we'll begin a meeting with a cross-section of community and business leaders, government officials, and individuals with lived experiences to discuss how to make our streets safer for everyone. Despite their differences, everyone here shares a common goal, doing whatever they can to see Baltimore live up to its greatest potential. The objective of this group is to continue the conversation around what we can do to provide more options and enhance supports for those young people who squeegee work and see it as their only option and best option for earning income. Today, as a community, we will work to identify next steps and prioritize the work ahead. As I've said many times before, this issue is not new. I know that our good councilman shared a video from 1985 with former Mayor Schaefer discussing this very issue at a time where I was 1 year old. This is something that has been in Baltimore for decades. And while it is not new and not a new problem, it will require some new and different strategies if we're going to solve what has been a long-standing challenge for us all. To say it very simply, I will not do what was done to me. We will not kick the can down the road. It will require us having difficult conversations, extremely difficult conversations, with a diverse set of voices who all care about the city. That is what today represents. And in the coming weeks, we look forward to providing updates on this work and letting the people of Baltimore know how we're working for them to bring solutions to this issue that has plagued our city for generations. Thank you. Questions? There are none? All right, great, we're gone. Get to the point.
Got it. Test. Hi, Mayor.
Hey, sir, how are you?
I don't know if you can answer this or the commissioner. I noticed in the statement that was put out this morning on the arrest that was made, Commissioner, you talked about how weapons are just too easily accessible to young people. Can you expand on that? Can you say anything about the weapon in this case if it was recovered?
I'll start on that before the commissioner comes. We know that guns and the flow of guns into cities is an issue across this country. And while I was at the White House on Monday celebrating the first big gun legislation in over 30 years and all the work and money that's baked into that to help us deal with that, you heard from our president, you heard from our vice president, you hear from folks like me all the time. We have to do a lot more because it is easier in some communities for folks to get a gun than it is to get fresh produce. And we have to get to a point, not just here in Baltimore where over 60% of our weapons come from other places, but in this country where we value the lives of American citizens more than the lives and the sanctity of American guns, which seems to be out of whack for me. We have to, and we will continue to do as we have this year, seize more guns. We seized more guns this year, over 1,300, than even we seized way back in 2014. We'll continue to do our part. We're going to work with our partners at the state and the federal level, but we have to get serious about what we're doing to prevent illegal guns from getting into hands of people who should not have them. As I said before, you shouldn't be able to print a gun at home. You shouldn't be able to make a gun at home with a jig. You shouldn't be able to just go and buy a whole bunch of guns and then distribute them to other people to commit violence. We have to get serious about this. In my role as one of the co-chairs of Mayors Against Illegal Guns, we're looking forward to having that conversation in depth with a bunch of us next week in New York City as well. Mr. Commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, as we stated, we've made an arrest in this case. I was briefed on yesterday about the warrant for the individual who is a juvenile, and today we picked that person up in Baltimore County. He's 15 years old, was 14 at the time of the crime, but is now 15 upon his arrest today. Cannot talk about any evidence that may have been seized as to not compromise the integrity of this ongoing investigation. What I will say is we want to thank our detectives for working really, really hard. We want to thank the community for being willing to come forward and give us the information we need that gave us the probable cause for a warrant for the arrest. And so it really is a total community effort that allowed the police department to go forward and make this arrest this fast.
And you said there was cooperation from the community. I'm seeing a lot of comments, people talking about self-defense in this case. I mean, you didn't have trouble with people coming forward? Is someone getting that reward?
Well, I can't speak to that at this moment, but early on, many reporters were out there. There were community members talking to the media. There was information that we were getting. There were a number of Crime Stopper tips that came in. While I can't speak to who's going to get the reward, I can say it was a collective, collaborative that allowed us to get this information this fast, to track down this individual and pick him up on this morning.
Thank you both.
Alexa?
Okay. I also have a question for the commissioner. Does the department have a clearer picture of the events leading up to the shooting? What prompted Reynolds to get out of his car and confront the squeegee kids? And if this teen was in fact the one involved in that confrontation?
Well, what I'll say is anything and everything that we have now at this point is what I would call a trial matter, and I wouldn't want to answer that as, once again, to compromise the integrity of the investigation. We had enough information going back to the incident and maybe even before the incident to put a case together that would give us probable cause to get a warrant signed. And so while I can't speak specifically to it, what I can say, it was well enough to give us probable cause. We feel confident that we have a good case.
Do you believe this teen was present during the first confrontation? What prompted police to initially be called to that intersection?
I can't speak to that specifically about police, but what I can speak is the first incident was an incident where police were called. We found an individual who was armed with a weapon and made that arrest and confiscated that weapon. The mayor's office of African Male Engagement was out there just a short while later delivering resources and working with a group of men. While we can't speak to each one of them by name, many people were out there and engaging with the city. And then this incident happened and police returned to that scene in a relatively quick time.
And to clarify, did you recover a gun?
That would be an answer for, that's an evidence answer, and right now we don't want to compromise the case. We want to make sure we maintain a strong case. So we don't want to answer any questions about evidence that will come out in a trial.
Sir?
Hey, good morning. Good afternoon. On our way here, we saw several squeegee workers on the corner. And how involved are they? How involved will they be in this process? Because many of them have been reluctant to get off the corner because, as you said, it's their only means of income that they believe. How involved are they in this conversation to getting them solutions as far as getting off the corners?
Well, I know you see the young men behind us, and there are much more who have that lived experience, and that's why they're here, to have that conversation about why they were out there, what happens when they were out there, what factors led to them being out there, and also to hear from the other side. We want everybody to be heard from, but that lived experience is something that we're going to lean on because it's important. And like I always said, and I said the other day, if you haven't been doing something, right? When people talk to me about zero tolerance, I always say if you've never been sat down on the curb and put in handcuffs in the rain just because you are breathing and outside in black, then you don't know that lived experience, and you should tread lightly on talking about that topic.
And have you heard about the different prosecution efforts, as far as the different approaches that the different candidates are taking? Have you seen any that you would align with your administration so far?
Well, what I'll say about candidates is that candidates are candidates. We're focused on the work that we have to do today, and we are, as the executive branch, we will continue to do our work. Candidates can say and do whatever they want during election time. This, for us, is about work that we have to do and that we were doing long before the events of last week, and we're going to continue to do here at Coppin and across the city. Mackenzie?
Hello. We've been hearing from a lot of people who say that they're taking different routes into the city. They're avoiding the inner harbor. They don't want to deal, they don't want to encounter a squeegee kid. They don't want to be put in that situation. We know there are several laws on the books that aren't being enforced right now when it comes to panhandling, aggressive panhandling. How are you, as an elected leader, upholding the oath of office that you took when we've heard you say that you don't want to see these kids cleared from where they're doing this activity?
Well, I think, Mackenzie, we know that truth and your station doesn't go together, so we'll start there. I didn't say that we don't want to see kids clear because they're squeegeeing. What I said is we have to be mindful, again, in Baltimore, when you all were running stories last month about a TV show that highlighted what happened the last time corners were cleared in Baltimore and how many Black lives were ruined just because they were out there. How many families were destroyed? How many times I personally had to be sat on the curb? How many times I personally was pulled over just because I was breathing in black and in Baltimore that someone felt uncomfortable with me being there? That's the kind of the conversation that we have to have as well. We will continue to, and I'll let the commissioner talk about how we enforce laws, right? We just talked to you about an arrest made at one of those locations. But we're also going to do that in a constitutional matter as approved by the Supreme Court, as we are talking with our consent decree judge and the monitoring our law department about what we can do, not about what sideline folks who think they know. Right? And we're going to work to solve this issue with everybody, with our business community, with our philanthropic community, with those with lived experience, with people in the community that want to step up and help and change Baltimore for the better. Because the reality is, as much as uncomfortable as it may make folks be, this mentality of just moving black people because they are there is what got Baltimore in a consent decree, is what makes us, as the home of the invention of redlining, one of the most racially divided cities in the country still today. We have to grow out of that and understand that we will hold people accountable for their bad actions, but we will not go back to recriminalizing just being black in Baltimore, period.
Did you want to have the commissioner weigh in?
He doesn't need to. I said everything that needs to be said.
I thought you said you wanted to have him explain the enforcement.
Sarah, you want to add?
That's up to you. I will.
Come on, go ahead.
When it comes to enforcement, right now at this very moment, in federal court, in Judge Berdar's courtroom, our city solicitor, I believe other members of the solicitor's office are engaged with the Department of Justice right now. The judge and the monitoring team in a meeting where I was supposed to be, but I chose to be at this meeting, having conversations about the constitutionality of enforcing that, because the Supreme Court has weighed in, and for years we have been given guidance about how to interpret that and how to enforce, what to enforce, when or when not to. Right now, they are working on guidance to give the police department that I will in turn give our department, and that conversation is being held at this moment as we speak.
Mayor, what do you say to drivers then who are, whether they're from the city or not, and they want to come and help the city grow economically, and who are afraid of what could happen because they've seen violent incidents play out at corners?
What I'll say is that we know that violence is an issue everywhere, right, across this country right now. And when you see that folks, despite the things that are said, if you went to Oriole Park on Saturday, you saw that it was probably as filled as has been since opening day, right? When you see folks continue, it'll be that way on Saturday when M&T Bank is filled for a soccer friendly. Folks are going to still come into the city, but what I would tell folks is that if you have that kind of experience, report it to the police. Don't leave. Allow us to come and investigate it. But also understand that those young men are human too, right? And that no one was born and raised and decided that, like, yes, this is what I want to do for my life. This is how I want to provide for my family. No one wants to go out there and stand in Baltimore in July and August in 95-degree heat with 100% humidity and stand out there all day. This is an issue, again, Mackenzie, that has existed longer than you and I have been alive. And what we can't do, if you haven't seen the 1985 media stories where we're literally answering the same questions and folks are offering the same solutions, where I come from, doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results, it's called insanity. And that's exactly what they have been doing, at least for the time that I've been alive. Thank you. Dave?
Hi, thank you. I'd like to roll 4 questions into one about the incident. What will the police charging documents say regarding what happened, since they are going to be a public document? What did your detectives say are in those documents? How many times was the victim shot? Did the 15-year-old actually live in the Essex area? Or squeegee people coming from the counties as well? And is there a count of how many? And I'd be happy to repeat all those.
Well, I've been to both public and private schools, and that doesn't equal one question. That's not one. That's a fancy way of asking. That's a fancy way of breaking the rules about how many questions you can answer. Number one, it was good police and good detective work that tracked us to this individual in Baltimore County. While we can't say where he lives, it was good detective work that allowed us to track him there and make an arrest without harm and without incident. What we can say is, see, I forgot your first question.
What will police charging
So
documents
we are not
say
in possession of the charging documents as of yet and are unaware of what's in those charging documents.
What did your detectives say will be in those documents?
I have not been briefed as to what the detectives would say would be in the charging document. I believe what is in the warrant will be in the charging document, though I've been briefed that we had a warrant on yesterday for his arrest. He was arrested today, and it will be parallel to what's in the warrant.
And can you talk about the warrant then?
I cannot. What I can say is that we developed enough evidence that warranted probable cause that the court commissioner saw fit to sign because he or she agreed that we had probable cause.
A relative of the victim told me he was shot 5 times. Can you confirm that or tell us how many times?
I cannot.
And to your last question, Dave, I mean, we know in particular, it's no different than with panhandlers and folks who are homeless. They are normally drawn to the city center because that's where services are and that's where people are.
Mayor, the meeting that you convened today, business leaders and elected officials, can you say more about that meeting? Who's a part of it? What are y'all accomplishing there?
Well, this is the first one, right? What we're trying to do is bring all the impacted parties here, right? Because, yes, we all believe that when folks carry out violent acts, they're going to be held accountable. And my job is to make sure the police department is enforcing it and making sure that happens in this case. And let's just be honest, in all the other cases in Baltimore involving violent crime, right? Because we have to do that everywhere. And we're going to do that every time someone loses their life because of an act of violence. But we're also here to talk about how can we come together to solutions, right? What are our solutions? Not just from an enforcement standpoint, but that's going to be a part of it. How can we provide opportunities? What kind of programs can we create as far as jobs? What kind of support services can we bring? And with the wonderful business and philanthropic community that we have here in Baltimore, the full weight of my city government, the young people that have that shared experience, our other elected officials, our community members that are going to be involved, I have no doubt that while it is going to be uncomfortable, and I'm going to say this again, if we were willing to be uncomfortable many, many moons ago, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Being uncomfortable is necessary in order for us to come out of the other side of this with something that will help us to start to bring a resolution to this issue.
Two questions on that. Can you say who's a part of this group? And
There's a long list, so we'll send it to you. I don't want to get in trouble reading, and I might leave somebody out, and then I'm going to have to deal with that later on.
That'd be great. You talked about not wanting to kick the can down the road, that you've been left in a difficult position by failures to address this over previous mayors over the years. What's different this time around? What concretely are you going to do to address this differently?
Yeah, thank you for that. And let me be very clear. This is not just about my predecessors, right? Because many of them had the same thing. This is about Baltimore. Baltimore failing to address this issue from a government standpoint, from a business standpoint, community standpoint. Everybody has failed to address this issue, and we have to understand that that is a harsh truth for us. What's different about it this time is that we're not going to stop, right? We're going to continue this work, and also that we've already been doing it. So when you hear folks say you should offer them jobs, we do that all the time, right? We did that last week when they say, like, you should bring services and resources to them. Dr. Bunley and our team go out to these corners, and they do that all the time. This is about now, and me as the leader of the city going to everyone and saying, okay, everybody be involved in part of this. How can you help? Who wants to help? What can you offer us so that we can set a path for how we can deal with this issue, as my grandmother would say, from the rooter to the tutor, right? At every single function, opportunities, accountability, enforcement, all of the conversations have to be had, and we're going to have them all together, not in a back room, not where sections of the community are not included and folks are making decisions about people that they never have to look in the face and see, because it's easy to think you know who someone is when you're just driving past them. When you have to hear them, hear their story, right? It's a little different. It's easy to think you know someone if they're just in their car. When you have to hear their side of it, it's different. And you have to start that kind of reconciliation as a part of this process too, because I was just telling a young man before we came over there, they asked me, like, what's something that you did that you are proud of, that you feel good about? And I told them, one of the strongest things that I've ever done in my life is look a young man in the eye that actually had a gun pointed towards me and forgave him and talked about how we can resolve that issue. That is why this is different. Everyone's going to be together and no one's going to stop. Emily?
Mayor, we know your staff has begun meeting with some business leaders already since this incident happened. What are you hearing from them already, and are there concerns that are different than past conversations that have been had about this issue?
No, not really. You're hearing the gamut. The most important and most common thing we hear is that I'm willing to help. Right? You hear everything from the gamut. Some folks, they're focused solely on enforcement, right? And they have to have conversations with them about the wording and what that means. But everyone at the end of the day wants to work on the issue, and that's the most important thing.
And originally there was supposed to be a plan presented today from your youth cabinet. When can we expect that?
That's it. Faith ran out. I don't know, Emily, but I'll make sure that if Faith was here, I would have an answer very quickly, but we'll get it to you very shortly. And this is for the boys and young men of color work that they've been leading. It's been great bringing partners around from around the city to address long-standing issues that have been ignored in Baltimore for too long. Thank you all.